What's up, everybody? Jed Johnson here from dieselcrew.com. Of course, you know they call me Napalm. And I hope you're enjoying the 31 days of Q&A series so far. If you've missed any of the videos, make sure you go into the description box and check out the playlist. You can go through there and see what you haven't seen yet and get that watched. Also in the description box, plenty of ways that you can support the channel. Not just products, but also ways that you can buy apparel and equipment and other things that are related to my business and passion, which of course you know is grip sport. Today, the video is brought to you by the Napalm Nightmare. You might see it called the 2.0. And you might be wondering, what are those handles on there? Aren't they usually round handles? Actually, there's a variety of handles that come on the Napalm Nightmare, and it's going to be very key to the discussion today, because the question that I'm answering is, which Saxon bar should I buy? This is actually a discussion that I just had with one of my Instagram followers today, and it's probably the 10th time this year I've answered this question, so I wanted to make this video so that I could start sending people to this video if I don't have time to answer this question. So there's a real simple way to suggest which Saxon bar to buy, and there's a more complex way of developing, you know, a more complete answer. The first thing I'm going to say is, if you are planning to compete in a grip contest and you know what the events are, then if the Saxon bar is in that competition, then you will want to buy the Saxon bar that's in the competition, meaning you will get the Saxon bar that is the same size as the Saxon bar that's in your contest. Now, there are a few Saxon bars. The most common ones are 3x4, 2x5, these are inches, and then there's a 2.5 by, and I wasn't sure what the other measurement was, but there is a variety, and there may be more out there, I'm not sure. I think there's also some Saxon bar variants that are maybe 2x4, and there's also 3x3. Now I'll tell you, I would not buy a 2x4, and I would not buy a 3x3. I don't even have that down on my notepad. But I'm telling you, on a 2x4 and a 3x3, there's a good chance that longer-handed individuals will be forced to, they'll find that their fingers will wrap underneath the bottom of the Saxon bar, and really that's not allowed. It won't happen on the 3x4 or the 2x5. But I know some companies make 3x3s. I know some people have bought those. Don't buy those. Okay? So the biggest thing is you would buy the size of Saxon bar that you will be competing on in the upcoming contest. That way you can get the most accurate training stimulus. And sure, it matters which company makes it. There is some variety in the steel that's used on some of these, but for the most part, you want to at least match up the measurements, okay? And then it's up to you where you buy the equipment from, and my buddy Luke is one of the most competitively priced that's out there. Plus his turnaround time is insane. People remark about it all the time. Next, I do want to say that just because there's an event in a grip contest doesn't mean you have to buy it. I've heard that from so many people. Oh, there's so much equipment out there. There's so many different handles. I can't afford all this, blah, 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 blah. You don't need to buy everything. People complain about the barrier to entry to grip sport because of all the different implements that are out there. There's nobody saying you have to go and buy all that stuff. Okay, the reason that I have so much stuff, the reason you see it in the background in so many videos, is not because I look forward to training on all these implements. It's because in my business, often I can always write this stuff off. Next, I'm training partners with Luke Raymond, who runs Arm Assassin, and he will often just make a copy of the implement for himself or me or both, so that we have it in our arsenal to train with just in case we need it. But a lot of that stuff never gets used, man. You wouldn't believe how much dust is on there. So don't go buying everything. You certainly don't need to go buy both a 3x4 and a 2x5 Saxon if you're not training for both of those for upcoming contests. So one of the things that I talked about with this individual this morning is, where are you located? And he told me where he's located. And frankly, there's not a lot of contests out there. So if he were to tell me that he was in like Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, then I would have looked up and seen what size Saxon bar that Mr. Spencer runs down at his Snacktown grip contest, because it would only make sense to train on what the promoter near him puts into the contest that he runs. But since he's in a different city, there's nothing really nearby. I didn't make a suggestion. Now, I did look at the Grip Sport International calendar, and there are 5 contests on there right now, and 4 of those contests involve 2x5 Saxon bar. And the other one, I don't think was actually specified, it just said Saxon bar. So at least 4 out of the 5 of the recent and current upcoming contests involve the 2x5 Saxon bar. Now, I don't have information for like the last year or the last 2 years. I can't tell you which, by popularity, which one is more common. And I have absolutely no idea what's going on in arm lifting meets. I'm only talking about grip sport stuff. But, you know, when you have a question on which handle to buy, a lot of times you can go to the top 100 lists, which are now found on Grip Sport International, and you don't have to go to the gripsport.org page anymore. You can go to the top 100s and see which lift has more results, and then you can gauge the popularity on the event that way. So which one gets contested more often is important to know if you're trying to deliberate on which Saxon bar to get, which area do you live in, and which contests nearby you hold those Saxon bar events. Take note that a lot of times you can see that certain events get run in streaks. So maybe a contest puts the finish ball in, and then all of a sudden there's a promoter at the event, and then when they like finish ball, so they end up adding finish ball to the next contest that they run. And then a bunch of people put up videos of finish ball, and then the next thing you know, it becomes a popular event. Now, it might not be popular forever, but you can see these streaks take place, or an event will die. Like, let's say I run an event and I'm going to hold the 2-hand pinch, and it's on the Euro. Well, then that might become a popular event because people, you know, end up buying their own Euros, and they end up running their own competitions. And we have seen a little bit of that this year, where there's been a couple of contests with the Euro involved. So that's another thing that's possible, is those streaks. So you might see a contest come up, and the 3x4 is just run over and over and over. It's because of that popularity for that short amount of time, and you know, then it could go away. So that's the risk you take with buying any equipment that is, you know, has one use. All right, so that is something that you have to understand. I do want to point out that, you know, I've heard some people say, well, I'll just buy the 3x4 because it's wider, and it'll carry over to the 2x5. That is true, but it isn't. So just because you're training on the 3x4 and you put 50 pounds on your pinch, that does not mean you're going to have an automatic 50 pounds additional to your 2x5 performance. It's just not the case. And there's no guarantee by training wider that you're going to have better results on the more narrow equipment. Vice versa, just because you put 50 pounds on your 2x5 doesn't mean you're going to see that same increase on the 3x4. Remember that training is specific, and often you're going to get results to that specific size of implement, rather than seeing a bunch of crossover, especially when the difference is a full inch on the Saxon bar, the top of the Saxon bar. So I wanted to point that out as well. Now I do want to propose a solution that will help you buy basically one implement and be able to cover both of these widths. And that is the Napalm Nightmare 2.0. We call it the 2.0 because the original Napalm Nightmare had plastic handles, and now all of the handles on the Napalm Nightmare that I'm aware of are made out of steel. The Napalm Nightmare has round handles that vary in many sizes. Also, you can get the pinch handles, and they match the Saxon bar sizes. I find and I feel that the Napalm Nightmare is a great way to train to prepare your hands for these sizes of pinching. Now, you do have to understand that the pull height is different. So you're going to have the biggest plates flat on the ground for Saxon bar, whereas you're attaching a Napalm Nightmare to the top of a loading pin. So you're only going to be able to move the Napalm Nightmare handle, 6 to 10 inches, depending on how you have it set up. But with the Saxon bar, you got to pull that to lockout. So you're probably dealing with a foot, maybe 16 inches to pull the lockout, depending on the stance you use and the plates that are used. So that I do want to point that out. However, the size is really, really good, and you'll be able to train for these specific sizes. I would also want to point out that on the Napalm Nightmare, you're able to tilt because the center of the majority of these handles, or excuse me, the hole on the majority of these handles goes right through the center of the handle. You can buy them offset, which is a great idea, and you can start, implementing conjugate training into your grip training. But all you really have to do is don't excessively tilt it when you're training on the Napalm Nightmare, and it will help produce better carryover to the Saxon bar. The Napalm Nightmare, especially if you pick up the one-hand Nightmare, the handles interchange. So you can have a bunch of sets for the Napalm Nightmare, and then you just unscrew the Allen collar, take one of the handles off, and you can train it one-handed for a one-hand variation as well. So that's really, really good. The system makes the system makes buying a great variety of implements unnecessary. And what you're able to do is with just two different frames, the two-hand frame and the one-hand frame, you can accurately train for a great variety of implements, events, and handles. Also, by purchasing a Napalm Nightmare and a bunch of handles, it's going to take up a lot less room where you train. So I know that people who train at their home, at the garage, outside in the lawn, basement, we're going to take up a lot less room. It's a lot less stuff to get out and take into the training area. So that makes it a pretty big advantage to train on the Napalm Nightmare. The other thing I wanted to point out is you really don't know what the paint surface is going to be like on these Saxon bar handles. And I have seen Saxon bars where the paint job just does not allow a real good chalk base to adhere to it. You do not have to worry about that with the Napalm Nightmare because Luke paints everything with bed liner paint, which is nice and gritty. It's got a great surface to it. It takes chalk well. And if it ever wears off, you just go buy a can and repaint it. Like, that's totally permitted. So I hope this video has been helpful in deciding which Saxon bar to get if you are dead set on a Saxon bar. Oh, one thing that I meant to say and I forgot is the dimensions, the length dimensions of the gripping surface on the Saxon bars for grip sport and for arm lifting are different. And what I mean by that is some of them are rackable and some of them aren't. So depending on whether that's important to you, you want to make sure you get the right variation of Saxon bar. But other than that, guys, if you want to pick up a Napalm Nightmare, go to the description box. That's also where the playlist is for the 31 days of Q&A, as well as many other links to ways that you can support me and my channel if you'd like to. So be sure to give the video one of these. Make sure you subscribe, and don't be afraid to share this video, because I will be sharing this video with people who ask me that question, which Saxon bar should I buy? Thanks everybody. All the best for your training.